of course, the monkey wants to speak. The first one to speak is a monkey.
Welcome.
You're a monkey.
Welcome to.
How could you fall for that old thing?
All right.
It's supposed to be a long thing of silence till somebody decides what the hell.
You're right.
It would kill a whole day if somebody doesn't be the monkey.
Welcome
You're
to.
taking a bullet. You're being the monkey. That's good.
Welcome to. Should I go?
They call this chemistry.
I can see.
Welcome to Standup Memories.
Anything but chemistry.
Kind of like boiling over chemistry.
Yeah, right.
Welcome to Standup Memories. This is Jackie Martling. I'm Peter Bales, and boy, do we have a great guest this week.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is John Blenn, Long Island writer, director, historian, critic, you name it. This guy's got playwright. I should have said playwright.
You should have said that first.
I should have. John Blenn.
Luckily, I'm here.
And so much to talk about. This guy has seen everything on Long Island since when? When did you really start checking out the scene, both music and comedy?
I first started writing for my college paper at Nassau Community College in 1977. Wow. So I covered national acts that came through the school there. And I became
Was that pre-Good Times magazine?
Oh, yeah.
They hadn't even started yet.
Oh, no, well, actually, that was before I was at Good Times. Good Times started in 1969. It's actually 1 month younger than the Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone started March 1st, 1969. They started April 1st.
It was actually that purple mimeograph that smelled like in the back of the church room.
The dittos.
Dittos. Who could ever
Would I be wrong to say Good Times was overpriced? It was actually
it was free.
It was a free publication, but a very successful one for a long time.
Still
right?
going. It just went by its 53rd anniversary.
That's terrific. That's terrific.
That makes them, other than Rolling Stone, the longest entertainment magazine in the country.
Oh, that's great. Yep. Now, you wrote for them for a long time.
14 years in two different shifts, yeah.
And you covered comedy and music?
Comedy, music, theater, basic sports. Basically anything that went into lifestyle, entertainment, arts. Yeah, I covered it at some point or another.
I am hoping that you didn't write it. I'm pretty sure you didn't write it. But it might have been the first review I got. We did a thing at my father's place, which was the name of a club on Long Island called Long Island Ha Ha. And I played the guitar and sang and told some jokes. And me and John DeBella were the host. John DeBella from
LIR later on,
at
right?
the time.
Yep.
And
Hofstra, too.
My review, and I'm pretty sure in Good Times, was usually obnoxious, sometimes amusing. Jackie Martling. In my local post office, I was there every day, like I've always been. And that guy called me sometimes until the day he retired. Hey, sometimes. I never shook that. But I hope you didn't write it, Glenn.
No, it wasn't, but I respect their viewpoint.
And you know what? Every time I'm up there, I'm like, he had a point.
You know, every comic has had a bad review. I've had several.
I wrote some of them.
And I actually made fun of a guy in the audience. I made fun of his jacket. He turned out to be a reviewer down at the Fort Lauderdale comic strip. He said in his review, listening to me was painful.
That is a great thing to tell our podcast audience. This is my partner, Peter. Listening to this may be painful. Why don't you throw in injurious to your health while you're at it?
I'm just being honest.
Right.
Now, you had to give negative reviews, and sometimes you might have been friends or known these people. You'd see them again. How is that? How do you handle that?
I don't think most people handle criticism very well, and I think that you have to realize...
I do!
You're an exception to the rule, of course, but...
Nobody does.
No, but I think you have to realize if you're going to bring something out to the public and put it out there, you got to open yourself up to it. I've had people come up to me saying, well, you don't know what it's like to be criticized. I got a negative review on the second play I ever put up, and I will say it's one of the best reviews I ever got. It's a guy named Carl Gordon, and he wrote for the Merrick Life magazine. Came in and reviewed a play I did called Trailer Park Etiquette, which is exactly what it sounds like. It was a piece about a trailer park that I was inspired by on Route 110. And he wrote,
Trailer park etiquette is almost an oxymoron.
That's the whole point of the title. I used to go for oxymorons in almost every single thing I wrote. Yeah.
So great.
So he came and he saw it and he said, if you like Taming of the Shrew, if you like Kiss Me Kate, you'll hate this. And he went right on down the line on all the things he didn't like about it. And he wrapped it up with his last line was, if you like television sitcoms, then this is kind of like that. But if you like theater, it's got nothing in common with theater. I actually ran into him a few weeks later in a supermarket in the area, and he thought I was coming down the aisle after him. He's like, "Hey, look, I'm sorry, but it's just the way I felt." I was like, "No, I just wanted to shake your hand."
To look
And he was bewildered.
To look at stuff positively, that's proof that he watched it. He was awake. Of course, there weren't cell phones then, so he wasn't on the cell phone. But you have to pay attention to something to see.
Even better than that is he was so detailed on why he didn't like it. And why I appreciated it so much was anybody who liked his point of view would go, good, I'm not going. At which point you're not going to get mad at me because you spent $15 to see a play.
Okay.
However, if you go, I like that stuff. I think this guy's an idiot. You're coming.
Right.
So
this isn't for me, but here's what you can expect.
That's the objective that every reviewer really has to go at it with is define it, describe it, detail it, and then let the general public make up its own mind. So,
I don't know if I could have handled the criticism like you did. And I don't know if you could either. I once introduced Jackie at a roast with, ladies and gentlemen, here's the man most able to dish it out and least likely to take it. And then he comes up and his first line is, what do you mean by that?
No, you can't. You got. Even if you do roll with it, you got to pretend you don't roll with it. I have not a review of one of your plays, but I have a very weird story, and I have no idea if there's any way you could remember this. And it's very weird because it was after I quit drinking, and for some reason I ran into a woman. You probably know of Maureen. It has the matchmakers thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And she says, "Come on, Jackie. I'll give it to you for free. It's supposed to cost $5,000. But it's the best. This is like maybe before Match. This is so long ago." And she said, "I'll set you up with a couple of girls." So I do the thing and blah blah blah, so she could use my name. And I went on 2 dates. The first date was do you remember the movie? Was it Kim Basinger who had one drink and she
Yes.
and she felt it was a perfect date or something was called, and she just was dead drunk after a sip. All right. I went with this girl.
I think Bruce Willis was the other half of that, wasn't he?
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Willis and Basinger. Right.
So I go with her to a local bar, and she has a sip, and she's a monstrosity. So that ends that. So this other girl, I go on a date, and I go, you know what? I'm going to take this girl to a play. I'll take her to John Blenn's play at the brokerage. And the plays are small, and it's not a huge audience. There's probably maybe 40, but it might have been 25, however many people. But it's a cute little play, and we're there. And I haven't been on a million dates in my life, and I'm sitting with this girl, and we had a drink. She leans over and starts trying to make out with me. You know how small the room is. The play's there. There's X amount of people, and people at this point 20 years ago still knew who I was, and I'm sitting there. I can't believe that I would push somebody away, and we had to get up and leave. I'm like, I hope John doesn't think.
We always tried to encourage that because if you were busy doing that, you weren't throwing stuff at us.
Well, I got to tell you.
But I mean, we were dead center, and she was nice looking. She must have been a little bit lonely. I don't know.
Or mentally challenged.
Well, I put that in the box of what I request.
Let me just tell the audience. The end of this story is the charges were dropped.
Yes, I decided to let her off the hook.
How many plays have you written?
96.
96.
Okay.
And you have no ending number. You're going to keep going for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I haven't written anything the last couple of years because there hasn't been a whole lot funny to me.
Yeah.
And there are some
In the
years.
old days, he would have written one since he sat down.
Right.
Yeah, I've written as many as 12 in a year. So
Wow.
It definitely is. You guys know because you write stand-up comedy. It comes in flows. You feel it. You can go on forever, and when it isn't there, you just got to wait until
When
it
the
is.
faucet stops or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to add a new joke every decade or so. And
I didn't catch this decades.
I'm not there yet. I'm getting there.
I just tell my old stupid jokes.
It's only
but
2 years into this decade.
I tell my old stupid jokes, and there's nights, not nights I'm working, but there's days where I'm like, every one of those jokes is so funny. And the next day I'm looking, I'm like, there's nothing funny. You know, like just the way stuff hits you. You know, I'm sure it's the same with writing. You know, wow, that's a funny anecdote. That's a funny thing that happened. Like, no, it's not.
Now, all three of us remember comedy in the 80s and the 90s and now. Can you put your critic's hat on and don't pull any punches and talk about some of the differences you might see between then and now?
You are much older.
You haven't.
I'm sorry.
You haven't aged a bit. You look terrific.
And your eyesight's going.
Well, certainly you guys know even better than I am what the heyday was like out here. I remember like Saturday nights when you could go to Chuckles for a 7 o'clock show. There wasn't a seat available.
Right.
Then you'd make it over to East Side for like the 8:30, 9 o'clock show. There wasn't a seat available. Then you'd wind up in Lake Ronkonkoma for the 11:30 show. There was not a seat available. And the night before, you'd go to Brokerage one night. You'd go to Governor's the other night. They were both completely sold out.
It was, it was red hot, and it was new.
Always.
You know, like I remember I booked Governor's, an opening night at Governor's. They were literally packed in with a shoehorn, but it was new, but it just maintained for so long. But I think it started. All of a sudden, there was so many clubs. There was a club in every city, in every little town, and all of a sudden, everybody's like jumping on the bandwagon.
Sure.
All of a sudden, there were like 150 comics in 1980, and there's 150,000 now. You know.
Well, I mean, just go onto YouTube or any of those things and see somebody's name in comedian, right? Like after their name in their title. They define themselves by that, but yet, are you working all over the country, or are you defining yourself as comedian by 7 open mic nights a
Club
week?
owners complain that, you know, somebody has 75 million hits on TikTok or YouTube, so they book him. This guy's got to be somebody. You know, it's like me sending Howard Stern my comedy albums. He's, wow, this guy must be somebody. Yeah, he's somebody who made albums for himself. But like, that was a calling card, and they're like complaining, like, the guy wasn't funny at all. I said, well, people looked at 10 seconds of him on the internet, but that's
But
how it works.
those packed out clubs in the 80s are legendary. People have heard about it. People have always talked about what happened, why did it dip down, and I think there are different factors. In the early 80s, being a comedian was like being a fighter pilot. That's how cool it is.
And how special it was.
And how special it was. That's my point. And now everybody's cousin is a stand-up. And to be a stand-up, really you just have to do a show someplace. And I'm okay with that, but I mean, there are different levels. My point is, we used to pack out the East Side Comedy Club on Monday nights.
Right.
Monday nights, and now the clubs are doing open mic nights on the weekend. What the hell happened?
I think the question he really is asking, and I'm asking, was it as great back then as we remember? I really think it was.
Oh, I think it absolutely was.
I don't think it's just something that's clouded in smoke, like, oh, that was so great. You know, and then you think back to the date with that girl, and like, no, she was a pig, and it was horrible, and what am I talking about?
Right.
The places were packed, and we a lot. I didn't know what I was doing, but we were all flying blind, and it was fun. But it was, I think everybody was discovering it. The audience was discovering it too. You know.
I mean, there were really remarkable craftsmen in those days too, in terms of what they were writing. It was a brand new frontier. There were a lot of people with very unique visions that were very different than anything that had come before them. I mean, I remember when the first time I saw Sam Kinison, I couldn't believe my eyes watching him. It's like, who is this guy? And I was at Steve Martin at the Nassau Coliseum when he was the first comedian to play an arena.
Yes.
He's in a basketball arena, you know, doing things on stage like, I want to thank the upper deck for coming, so I did a special trick for you, the disappearing dime trick.
I was just going to ask you, do you remember him taking out the dime?
Oh my God, it's classic stuff.
Oh man.
And then after him, Murphy, of course, got to the arena level. After Murphy came Kinison. After Kinison came Clay. You know, and right now we have a few of them, but there's not really all that many that have made that jump when you stop to think about it.
Now let's give credit where credit is due. George Carlin
actually never got to arenas. Always played large theaters.
Was that his choice?
But yes,
Arenas
absolutely was his choice.
Aren't made for comedy.
Right.
They just aren't.
It's made.
And I think when Sam and Dice and then were doing it, they didn't have those monstrous screens yet.
Correct.
There they were. You went to see. Who did I go to see? Jethro Tull. I think I went to see Jethro Tull in the Detroit Cobo Hall, and you sit in your seat and they're this big. You're like, what am I doing?
Do you know how you know somebody's an idiot when you say to them, "Do you like Jethro Tull?" and they go, "Yeah, he's great." That is a sure example of somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. Listen, Lenny Bruce started it. George Carlin came along. Robert Klein came along. Steve Martin came along.
Yep.
And people realized, as you're in the 70s, you don't have to wear a coat and tie and talk like you're in the Catskills. There's something
Watch
new.
it. Don't step on toes here.
There's something new happening here. And it was special, and it was different.
I remember being just around the beginning of my teenage years, going to my library in East Meadow and finding an album from Atlantic Records by a guy named Chris Rush.
Oh!
And we brought it home and went, what is this?
Wow!
And to meet him all those years later after listening to that as a kid, a little bit before when I should have been listening to it, it was remarkable.
I still remember that album cover.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
It was just,
First Rush, and a baby with his finger in an electric socket, and a kid kissing his date and wetting himself.
He came to my college, Northwestern University, and performed, and I was there and in the audience and inspired beyond belief by what Chris Rush did. And Robert Klein and Chris Rush just pushed me into comedy. I couldn't believe what I saw when I saw Chris Rush doing what he was doing. It was so different than anything on television even.
He was like 3 feet tall. We actually worked the same club. There was a club, and I think it lasted 2 weeks. I think he refused to even do the shows. It was a place in South Beach called the Cuckoo's Nest, and the waitresses were dressed as nurses. And it was some guy from up here who somebody's going to remember. Somebody's going to send us an email and say, I remember that. I forget who the guy was, but he thought he had a home run. It was because it was unique because it was such a bad idea.
Chris Rush had the single best ad lib I've ever seen in all my years in comedy. But I'm getting a signal here. This has been terrific. This has been Stand-Up Memories, and we're going to come back with more in the future with the incomparable John Blenn.
Did you just cut off your own story?
Well, it's a teaser, actually. That's a technique that professionals use, something called a teaser.
No, that's called piss off the viewer or the listener or whatever they are.
We
don't even know if you're listening or watching. All we know is we have a great guest, John Blenn. He's not going anywhere. So if you happen to tune in tomorrow, next week, last week, whenever he's here again, he's going to be here again. Am I right?
You are right. See you next time.
That's good. That's good. That's Peter Bales.
Jackie Martling.
Thank you.
All right, big deal. Hey, a new episode of Stand-Up Memories every Wednesday.
How exciting is that?
Starring me, Peter Bales, and right here, Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
Please follow us on social media. Search it out. What is it? MeSpace?
MySpace,
Your space?
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Doodah, doodah.